Let's jump right into this explainer. If you're managing hardware refreshes, cloud spend, or honestly any IT procurement right now, you already know the market is acting completely erratic. But here's the thing. This isn't just your standard cyclical blip. Today, we're going to break down exactly what's driving this massive 2026 supply crunch and, more importantly, equip you with a pragmatic, data-driven action plan to actually protect your enterprise budgets.
To get there, we'll run through our agenda. First, to 2026 memory shock. Second, the forces driving the crunch. Third, the enterprise cost cascade. Then our four-tiered action plan, followed by the new rules for negotiation, and finally, a look ahead to 2027.
Let's start with part 1, the 2026 memory shock.
We really have to grasp the sheer scale of what we're facing right now. In just the first quarter of 2026, conventional DRAM prices spiked by an absolutely staggering 92% quarter-on-quarter. That is the steepest price jump we've seen in over 15 years. Contract prices essentially doubled in a matter of months. And it gets worse. Forecasts for Q2 show another 60% jump for conventional DRAM and a massive 70 to 75% rise for NAND flash. As for high-bandwidth memory, that is reportedly completely sold out through the end of the year.
Okay, moving to part 2, the forces driving the crunch.
So, what is actually causing this madness? Well, the first major force is a historic $660 billion capital expenditure commitment from the top 5 hyperscalers for 2026. We are talking about Amazon, Alphabet, Meta, Microsoft, and Oracle. And 75% of that massive budget is aimed right at AI infrastructure. Every single AI server they scoop up acts like a giant vacuum, creating an enormous, locked-in upstream demand for memory and storage. And that tidal wave of demand hits a very real bottleneck. Virtually all production is controlled by a 3-supplier market, SK Hynix sitting at 53%, Samsung at 35%, and Micron with 11%. Because AI demands specialized high-bandwidth memory, or HBM, these 3 giants have aggressively pivoted their silicon wafer capacity toward it. By doing that, they're mechanically choking off the conventional DRAM supply that the rest of us rely on for standard corporate gear.
To make matters even tighter, distributors right now are holding just 2 to 4 weeks of DRAM inventory. Usually they sit comfortably at 8 to 12 weeks. In a healthy market, that channel inventory acts like a sponge, right? It soaks up sudden shocks. Well, right now, that sponge is completely bone dry. There is absolutely no buffer left.
Which brings us to part 3, the enterprise cost cascade. You might be wondering how quickly these upstream fab costs actually hit your budget. The answer is incredibly fast. It starts with the memory fabs hiking contract prices. Then, hardware OEMs like Dell and HPE pass those costs onto new orders. Next, cloud providers like AWS raise their on-demand GPU and memory rates. And finally, boom! It hits your enterprise budgets directly. We're already seeing this happen. PC prices were up 17% early in the year, and AWS hiked on-demand GPU rates by 15%. This cascade is measured in weeks now, not years. So how do we fix this? Let's dive into part 4, the 4-tiered action plan. Here is your executive framework. We've mapped out a targeted 4-tiered action plan because, let's be real, you absolutely cannot treat a standard laptop refresh the same way you treat a multi-million-dollar AI server acquisition. You need totally different strategies based on what you're actually buying.
Tier 1 is buy now. For server DRAM, enterprise SSDs, and standard PCs due for a 2026 refresh, you've got to accelerate those purchases right now into the first half of 2026. You should even consider pulling forward 10 to 15% of your 2027 volumes just to hedge against further price hikes. Waiting is literally going to drain your budget, so lock in fixed-price contracts immediately, even if the actual physical delivery is staggered. Tier 2 is queue now. When it comes to AI-class GPU servers, your main constraint is allocation, not price. You need to place firm, pre-committed orders immediately to secure your spot in a massive 26 to 40-week queue. If your team is spending weeks haggling over a tiny 2% discount, they are entirely missing the point. Secure your place in line today, or you simply won't get the hardware this year.
Tier 3 is restructure. To protect your predictable cloud workloads, you need to urgently shift away from expensive spot pricing and lock in 12 to 24-month reserved agreements. Cloud providers are feeling the exact same hardware squeeze we just talked about, and they will pass those costs right onto their on-demand pricing tiers first. Restructuring insulates you from that volatility.
Finally, Tier 4 is stage. For discretionary, consumer-grade spend, you want to stage those purchases across 2026 and early 2027. Crucially, use indexed contracts here. This forces the supplier to share the price risk with you, ensuring that if the market eventually eases, your pricing automatically adjusts downward.
Moving right along to Part 5, New Rules for Negotiation.
To pull this plan off, your team needs a total mindset shift. We have to completely move away from traditional unit price negotiation and competitive haggling. In a normal, fragmented market, that works beautifully, but in a market controlled by just 3 silicon giants, it is a losing game. Instead, you need to embrace allocation and contract engineering. You are negotiating for priority now.
Your practical toolkit really comes down to 4 key levers. 1. Offer multi-year volume commitments to buy priority. 2. Diversify your suppliers at the module and system level. Leverage the fact that different OEMs like Dell and Lenovo have different aggregate allocations. 3. Utilize payment term flexibility, like upfront deposits, to secure your commitment. And 4. Engineer contracts with rock-solid force majeure clauses so suppliers can't just void your delivery when conditions get tough.
Let's wrap up with Part 6, a look ahead to 2027.
We have to set realistic expectations here. Mid-2026 is when we'll monitor hyperscaler CapEx to see if their demand cools off. But honestly, because new multi-billion-dollar fabs take years to build, prices are going to stabilize at these elevated levels well into early 2027. We likely won't see true material supply-side relief until new fabs reach volume production in late 2027 or 2028.
This quote right here distills the absolute core truth of this explainer. The procurement teams that successfully protect their budgets and operational delivery in 2026 will be the ones that treat this as an allocation and contract engineering problem, not a pricing negotiation. If there's only one takeaway you share with your team today, make it that one.
The cost of inaction is fundamentally higher than the cost of action right now. So, if true supply relief isn't coming until late 2027, what concrete steps is your procurement team actually taking this quarter to protect your operational delivery? It's time to put that 4-tiered plan into motion.
A massive thank you to the research team at Procurement Spectrum for providing the strategic intelligence and data behind this explainer. I highly recommend heading over to procurement-spectrum.com for their full enterprise toolkit, supply chain maps, and specific negotiation levers. Get your team prepared today because the 2026 supply crunch is already here. Will your supply chain survive it?